Good, good part of the day. Morning, afternoon, evening, night, tomorrow, yesterday. I like, Beth, with your permission, to avoid the head titles, the immediate political interpretation, and everything you can Google and find immediately. And I like to talk instead of talking about politics, to talk about psychopolitics. What does that mean? What do I mean when I say psychopolitics? I take it that everybody who is around this table or around this camera, around this display, is somebody who is devoted for peace in general, and particularly peace in our part of the world. It's not something that I have to push too much forward. What is the nature of the peace? Between whom? How can you do reconciliation when we never had a moment of conciliation? These are difficult questions, but I would like to ask a basic question. Everybody knows, more or less, give or take, what will be the nature of the arrangement once achieved. I don't really know the borders. I don't really know the size of each state. I don't really know the number of refugees, but I know that there are basic issues. And this is, there will be two political entities for two national communities, the Israeli Jewish one and the Palestinian one. There will be some mixtures, the Palestinians with Israeli citizenship. Jerusalem will be the capital, the shared capital of both political entities. There will be borders more or less, give or take, along the 67 lines, and the refugee problems will be resolved. Some will come back home, some will have compensation, some will find a solution in the third countries. And this is more or less it, as loaded as it is. Jerusalem is loaded, borders are loaded, refugees is a loaded issue, but everybody knows the nature of the solution. It's not that everybody knows the nature of the solution in June 2021. Everybody knows the nature of the solution for maybe 50 years, if not 50 years, 25 years at least, or as long as it takes. So you ask yourself, okay, if everybody knows where it goes, everybody knows where it will end up, why do we have to go through all of this torturous Via Dolorosa in order to get there if we know where it is? Why can't we jump straight forward to the bottom line? And I would like to argue in this evening, and especially with our group here, and especially with the amazing role model example that the combatants for peace are giving us and leading us through, that the issue is not so much about the politics of peace, it's about the psychopolitics. And I would like to explain. I have many conversations and I have many talks with my friends who are either Israeli Palestinians or Palestinians who live in Palestine itself, or Palestinians abroad. I go twice a month, I go to Ramallah to meet my friends, to maintain my social and political networks, etc. And whenever the conversation comes to this area, it goes like that. They tell me, not me, Avrum Burg, the individual, but me, the Israeli, the generic Israeli, and the generic they. And nobody is generic between the Jordan and Mediterranean. Believe me, everybody is a sample. Everybody is a unique one-off. But assuming there is a generic us and a collective us, whenever the Palestinians is telling the Israeli or are telling the Israelis, listen, you know, when you establish your state in 48, for whatever reasons you needed a state, it was essential at the background of the days of the late 40s in Europe, etc. When you created this, you actually generated an awful tragedy for the Palestinian people, the Nakba. Hundreds of communities and villages and towns were demolished. The history was perished. I mean, our memories eradicated, deleted. And I say to him, I, the generic Israeli, say to him or to her, this is a tragedy. Wait till you see mine. I had the Holocaust. And all of a sudden, and this is since 48 and much more intensified since 67, it's not about the solution, but it's about a competition of traumas. And it's about fighting who had the worst past in order to justify an awful today and therefore no better tomorrow. So if and when we would like to address the issue or the topic or the challenge of psychopolitics, the immediate thing is about recognition, is recognizing what the other side is going through and what are the prices of our side. And instead of saying mine is bigger, mine is more, yours is more, is to say, I understand how painful it is. Do you understand how painful it is for me? Let's not compete, let's contain. Let's try to say, I do not deny your narrative. And I do not want to correct yesterday's wrongs by creating new wrongs of today. But can we produce a better future? And once the generation will learn how to do it differently and better, then we shall revisit the past and learn how to live with these colliding histories. So how does it go? How does it work? Psychopolitics is less about practical measures. It is less about this settlement or this voting in the Knesset or this individual saying this and that. Psychopolitics is a lot about symbols. Symbols are so crucial. Symbols are so symbolic, if I may say. And the most important, powerful symbol of the Israeli national emotion is the twin days, as if born together, the Memorial Day and the Day of Independence. The Memorial Day begins with a lot of sadness and ends with a kind of exciting transformation into the Day of Independence, and from the depth of the agony to the height of celebration. And these are the two most important days in the national celebration. A moment and a bracket. What are holidays? Why do we need holidays? Why can't we leave Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Sunday, Monday, Why do we need all of these bus stops? What is it? I won't take you into the depth of Hebrew, but Chag in Hebrew is coming from a word which makes a circle. Chag chuga, ag uga, ma'agal. They are coming from the same place, as if you have a time which repeats itself, and you walk along the trail of time, and every now and then you stop. You stop at Rosh Hashanah, at the New Year, and you celebrate the universality of the creation of the world. You stop at Yom Kippur, and you charge yourself with values of universalism. You stop at Sukkot, for example. This is about temporary residence. You go out of your apartment, you go out of your comfort zone, you go out of the places that you feel so good with, and you go to something which is shaky, a kind of a little hut outside, in order to know that your economic situation is so fragile. And therefore, when you are well off, be aware of those whose situation is a situation of have not, like you have for this week of Sukkot, and be careful, charge yourself with the values of caring for those who do not have. And when you go to Passover, it's about liberty, let my people go. And each and every station, we stop along the round trail of time in order to charge ourselves with values. What do we charge ourselves in the classic Israeli Memorial Day? I will say it very, very carefully, and I will say it in a very, very cautious way. We charge ourselves with the price, the toll price of the death, in order to justify the present policies. This is what we do. Tell you an anecdote, which is, for me, a molding anecdote. The year is 82. The first war in Lebanon. I'm coming back from the battlefield. Two friends of mine and myself, we established the first ever protest movement of soldiers. Maybe it was the parental movement of a combatant for peace, to protest against this folly war. We went to Menachem Begin. We collected signatures of 2,000 combatant soldiers, paratroopers, Air Force pilots, you name it. And we went to late Menachem Begin, then the Prime Minister of Israel. And we said, and he accepted us, he received us. He was a great democratic person. And we said, Mr. Prime Minister, you're being fooled by Ariel Sharon. You have to put an end to this folly war. It's not a good one. And he thought for a second and he said, we already lost 85 holy soldiers. How can I stop now? The 85 soldiers justified 18 years of Israeli presence in Lebanon with more than 1,000 victims and tens of thousands of casualties, not to count the other side of the Lebanese and Palestinians and Syrians. This is the nature. That's the nature of this day. Up until a couple of years ago, we didn't know we can think differently. Then one day, out of nowhere, in a small place, a couple of dozens of people gathered in a very courageous way, somewhere in a dark room in Tel Aviv, and celebrated, not in the negative, commemorated the victims of both sides. To say there is no one side moon only. Every moon in the galaxy has two sides. So can we actually lean on the very heavy prices that the bereaved family paid and the bereaved societies are paying in order to put an end to this march of folly without arguing who is right and who is wrong? I accept your price. You know my pain. I share my empathy with you. You have a lot of compassion for me. Let's work together. I cannot justify any killing, but I can justify stopping the killing of tomorrow. And it started by a couple of dozens of people. And it continued by a couple of hundreds and became a couple of thousands. And even the opposition to us, those who would like to perpetuate this human sacrification as if this is the national symbol, stand outside and fight us, try to block it, to prevent Palestinians from coming, to prevent Israeli Jews to walking peacefully home, cursing, harassing, and it never stops. And then one day, Corona came to visit us. And all of a sudden, from a couple of thousands of people gathering in Tel Aviv, proudly sharing the alternative symbol as the cornerstone for alternative psychology, as a foundation for a structure of a different politics, with Corona all of a sudden, we arrived to run a what? 200,000 people, whatever it is. I mean, all of a sudden, we're all over the place. All of a sudden, we had a pandemic. How do you say good pandemic? I mean, bad pandemic, I know. How do you say good pandemic? I mean, all of a sudden, the message gets there. And if you ask me, and this is a comment which is a political one, you cannot and you should not ignore the contribution of deep, courageous measures done by Combatant for Peace and the family of activities around it during the year, throughout the year, towards the day and after the day, with the families and with the others, as I would say a seed, maybe a fantastic movement that eventually led as well to the replacement of the government. Governments do not just disappear because you say, I'm David Copperfield, abracadabra, hocus pocus, and the government disappear. No, when the government eventually falls down, it is because somebody else offered an alternative. An alternative should not and is not a shallow one. It's not an easy one. It's a complicated one. It's a very diverse one with many contradictions inside, but yet one of the basic layers, one of the deepest foundations for the capability to contain within the same government Israeli Jews and Israeli Palestinians. People who pay this price and people who are paying the other price is based on the amazing leadership that you all support, you are all enable, and I really urge you to double your efforts in order to make the occurrences of the last couple of weeks into a permanent movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you coming to join us. So maybe we could take some time for questions. I'm sure people have lots of questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and just ask. It's a small enough group that I mean, I wouldn't unmute yourself and give like a 10-minute spiel, but if you have a question, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask.
Speaker Berg, hi, my name is Ben Linder. I'm in California. I wanted to ask you about the inclusion of the Arab parties in the coalition for the first time. And what do you see as the path in the future for a more mainstream involvement of the Israeli Palestinians, the Israeli Arabs in the coalition government?
I would like to answer to begin the answer with a word I don't like to begin the answer with, I. Okay, I hate answers that begin with the I or the me or whatever, but let me do it, okay, Ben, I'm sorry. Here is the I. For the last almost 15 years, my major political, not partisan, but political public effort, both at the intellectual sphere, public opinion, and even some political action is to offer to try to build a joint platform of Israeli Jews and Israeli Palestinians that having a political party that its DNA, it's not the national grouping, Jews and Arabs, but it's the civic, shared citizenship. All of us together. I mean, we believe in equality. We are all equal with no discrimination and should not be any discrimination, none whatsoever. At home, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Baha'i, you can be a greenie, you can be a feminist, you can be a conservative, be whatever you want. But at the public, I would like to offer a shared political, equality for all platform. It did not yet work. But the efforts done by people like myself and many, many others, by the way, both Arabs and Jews, and the younger they go at the societies, the more people are motivated for the integration at the path paved by combatant for peace. If the symbols are possible, politics can be possible as well. And people say to themselves, if I go to the garage and actually I delegate the responsibility for my life because the guy who deals with the brakes of my car is an Arab. And when I go to the food store and I buy the best food from an Arab, and I go to the pharmacy and I take the best drugs to heal me, and I take it from Arab boys and girls. And when what the corona exposed, that hospitals are shared spaces, shared between Arab medical staff and Jewish patients, okay? Not necessarily the other way around. Wow, if this is so much shared without us seeing it, can't we share politics eventually? My answer is, of course we can, and we should have done it 20 years ago. What happened in the last elections is that the first to understand it was Nixon to China. It's the alliance between conservatives and conservatives. But I have no doubt that once the liberal and progressive of both sides will join forces, the power will be much more powerful. That will be a real Israeli political big bang. And I'm waiting for it, and I feel it around the corner.
Thank you.
I have a question.
I have a question.
Please.
Yes. So I've been participating in stateside in a number of Jewish organizations that have been working for 20, 25 years. One of them, for instance, is the New Israel Fund, which you may be familiar with. And
yes, very much so.
It strikes me that there has been just a colossal failure to organize the Israeli polity. And so I'm really curious about what your thoughts are about why it is that Israelis are so resistant. I mean, whatever small movement of progressive secular individuals there are, why is it so difficult for them to be organized politically into an effective force? I was in Israel working on kibbutz during the 73 war, and the force of the Ma'arach and the labor consensus and so forth, the coalition was so strong, and now Ma'arach is not even in the Knesset. So, and Ma'arach is nothing to hold up as a paragon, but I mean, just the evaporation of labor movement. So anyway, I think you get the drift of my question. It just, I mean, we do have, there have been outstanding, writers especially who have been been the spear carriers for a progressive approach. But
I'll try, Eliezer. It's funny. Where do you live in America, by the way, in the States?
I'm here in California.
Well, I take it that you didn't hear in California part of the news that we heard here in Israel, that for the last 4 years, you have an admirable, organized political liberal system. So, I mean, it sounds so funny when you criticize my political system when I'm not very much impressed by yours in the last couple of years. But, okay, no, it was just, I couldn't resist it, okay?
Couldn't resist, oh yeah, okay.
Okay, but let's look at it exactly from this point of view. We are living in an era, and maybe it's an invitation for a different political lecture. I'm not sure it is this one tonight. But we are living in an era all over the globe in which we witness something which is between troubling and inviting. We all, maybe Rana and Beth not, but all of us were born into the political premises of the post-Second World War, that one of the major building blocks of it was the liberal democracy. What was the liberal democracy? Democracy, let's call it, is the expression of the will of the majority, and liberal is the protection of the one. So between the one and the many, we had a kind of an equilibrium that we could live together. We're living in an era, and never mind who started and how it started and where it goes, but we live in an era of a divorce between liberal and democracy. And you see the rise of many, many, many illiberal forces. You see them in Washington, you see them in Jerusalem, you see them in Russia, you see them in Hungary, you see them in Turkey, you see them all over the world. So the phenomena of what we see here is not necessarily just something unique to our system. I will add something about our system in a second. Having said that, you see a coalition of all of these illiberal leaders. I will call them somewhere between soft to not so soft authoritarian politicos, populist, etc. To decipher why it happens, what's behind it, what did we lose with the good old system, worth a discussion. Part of it is my new book. Let's see if I will succeed to comprehend it all. Put it aside, come back to us. Israel of the last couple of years, because of many, many reasons, some of them are external. The failure of Oslo, the assassination of Rabin, and putting an end to a dynamic that started then and never continued and that was never fulfilled. The awful 2000s that you expressed, you experienced them at September 11th, and we experienced them at the Second Intifada, created this, and then the brilliant, not so shining brilliance of Ehud Barak coming back from Camp David and say, there is no partner. the minute there is no partner. And who said so? The captain of the flagship of the peace camp, so to say, labor, as you call them, okay, or One Israel, introduce 2 decades of irrelevancy. But add to this one more layer. And this is very, very important thing to understand. If I will ask you, I mean, I never checked. I'm not a chief rabbinate, and I don't know whom are you is from a Jewish faith, and who is something else. But if I ask an average American Jew, what are you? What are you? Tell me, what are you? So you'll say, listen, I believe in democracy, a wall of separation between church and state, fairness of the distribution of the general resources, law and order. Yeah, I mean, something like that. In America is the center of the mainstream democratic thinking. When you come with this position to Israel, you are no goodnik, you are traitor, you stab the back of the nation, you are well poisoner, or you are Avrum Burg. So there is a difference, a huge gap between your very solid, comfortable, democratic way of life, as challenged as it is recently, okay? And the Israeli one. Why is that? Here I will say our mea culpa, okay? Our responsibility. And this is as follows. Being a liberal, being left, being progressive, never mind how you want to label it, actually encompasses 3 elements: secularization of the public sphere, equality of all citizens, and fairness of the distribution of public resources. But in Israel, being left is, are you for or against an arrangement with the Palestinians? As crucial as it is not right and left business. You can be an arch capitalist and want an arrangement. You can be an awful socialist and be against it. You can be a total secular devoted observant and want to have a comprehension peace between us and the Palestinians. And you can be an awful secular and be against it. So it's not this issue. And we fail to offer a comprehensive Torah paradigm to compete the national / becoming chauvinist nationalistic Torah paradigm of the right. So your question is, on one hand, less valid because it's an international phenomenon and we are part of it. And on the other hand, it's very valid because we failed.
Good answer.
Sorry for the lecture.
I'd like to ask a question. Mr. Burg, I'm wondering about the whole issue of how Palestinians are viewed as human beings. Isn't that really a basic part of coming to a solution? You know, when you're talking about the psychopolitics, isn't that something that without that, there's not going to be a solution? What do you think?
Of course, Evelyn, if you ask me, I will tell you every human is human. And for me, everybody was created in the image of a human being. Whether you believe in God or not is a religious question. And therefore, of course, everybody should be like that. And the humanization and demonization is something awful, something we should fight against. And on this, I will say as follows. I, for a long, long while, stopped counting states anymore. I do not count 1 state, 2 states, 5 states, 25 federation, 56 cantons and confederations. I don't count states anymore. I count rights. And the struggle, the only struggles I'm involved in are not struggles for technical solution, 1 state or 2 states or whatever, but I struggle for one principle only, that between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, every individual has and should have the right to have the same rights. I don't care how many political structures will exercise it. But this is the principle, which corresponds deeply with what you say.
Can I ask a question about young people?
I have a couple of them at home.
Good. I mean, one of the, when you look at the US political system, one of the reasons to be optimistic is that young people are more open than their parents' generation, more equality driven, more colorblind, and so forth. And from all the polling and data, it looks like Israel actually is the other direction, that the young generation is actually more conservative or more hardcore, especially on the Palestinian issue. So I'm curious about whether you think, do you agree with that? And then are there ways to counteract that? And how does one do that?
I'm not at all sure. I'm not at all sure in the following sense. At all the years I'm either involved or observe or write about or think about the Israeli political system, I hardly ever found any issue or any topic which is generational. I know a couple of, I'll tell you an anecdote, okay? A year and a half ago, we're sitting around our Shabbat table. My family, one side, my wife, my father-in-law is 97 years old, myself, 66 years old, and two of my kids, and she was pregnant. And my son asks his grandfather, which is my father-in-law, and myself, I wanted to open up with you the whole issue of circumcision. Daddy, you shut up because I know your opinion. Grandpa, what do you think about it? It was a fair question. The grandfather, my father-in-law, 97 years old, had no clue what what my son wants to hear. My father-in-law is an Orthodox observant Jew, was a partisan at the French Resistance, fantastic human being, an amazing human being, and among other things, my best friend. Yes, my father-in-law, but my best friend, okay? And he speaks slowly. He was always very slow, but now he was even slower. And in a very heavy French accent, he answered his grandson. He says, I know many people. I never realized that one is a better Jew or a worse Jew because an inch at the bottom of his existence. End of answer. So my son said, how the heck did I ask this question to a bunch of old liberals, okay? Why are you two more liberals than I am? Having said that, I know a couple of old liberals and young, awful conservatives. I know people open-minded, young and old, etc. So for me, it is much more about your attitude rather than your age. I can say one thing that I'm thinking about. I see and watch, cannot say monitor, but I watch closely the younger generation at the Democratic Party actually erupting through Bernie Sanders' option. And later Elizabeth Warren, but Bernie gives much more. And so many of them are Jews, and so many of them coming from Jewish origin, and so many of them do not really see the organized community of the CJF, UJA, JEFNA, whatever are the initials are today. They don't see it as representing them. And this is a young phenomenon. I do not really see it here in Israel. I don't know why. Maybe it's the military service fatigue. Maybe it is something else. But I would like to be much more Hannah Arendt to say, I'm looking for partners who share the same value language rather than the same generation language.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm Peter Sly. I live in Brooklyn, Maine. I've only been in the area once. It was on a Footsteps of Jesus trip. I'm a secular Christian, I guess I would say. And my question for you is, one thing we heard on our trip with a very strong message was that the road to Jerusalem leads through Washington, D.C. And there were several anecdotes about that, about the importance of the United States. And you're certainly seeing that in the issues being fought out in the United States Congress to some extent. But in the bigger picture, what do you think would be the productive role of the United States to actually help this along? Because the perception that I heard was that the United States is the 900-pound gorilla. And we cannot sit back and in this country and wash our hands and say, let the Israelis and Palestinians work it out. Then we'll help. Well, what's your thought about the role of the United States?
I'm a one who was disappointed so many times by the expectation for the American Deus Ex Machina to come and save us. President Obama, did we have a more liberal one? Bill Clinton, did we have a better one? And somehow it doesn't work. America or Europe cannot do the dirty work for us. I think that by the beginning of the day, if I go to the original initial comment of Beth earlier, it is us bottom up, be it through the civil societies and the NGOs and whatever it is, building a different conscience and a different awareness that eventually will make the change. In Palestine, it happens. In parts of Israel, it's already happening. I believe in it. Then it's for the international community to help to make it possible. But if you look at the names of political arrangements recently, Oslo is not in America. I mean, there are a couple of Oslos in America, but not this Oslo, okay? The Geneva Accord, it's not in America, okay? The Madrid Conference is not in America. And I can go on and on and on and on and on and show how America, by the end of the day, came eventually, but never led. Having said that, I have something in my mind, but it is only a thought. I know it will never happen. There is only one way to put an end to a war in our region, to the occupation in our region, and to wars around the world. And this is to completely forbid exporting of arms and weapons and machines, guns, and whatever it is to regions of conflict like ours. Can we force this on the American arms industry, military industry? I'm not at all sure. They like us as the experimental shooting range. But that's the only way to do it. I don't see any other way to dry the swamp.
I absolutely agree with you, but I will take it one step further, I guess. And that's the issue of a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East. What good do the nuclear weapons do to Israelis now? Are they really of any particular use?
Let's leave it for some other evening. Let's leave it for some other evening, okay?
Okay.
I'm not at all sure we have enough time in order to describe the process towards a Middle East clean of weapons of mass destruction. So I owe you one, and the minute it will be organized, I'll be more than happy to offer you a suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question. I'm Sorrel Rosenberg from Montreal. What do you think about what we're told is the rise of anti-Semitism in the world?
I will put it like this. I would like to make a distinction between real expressions of real anti-Semitism and weaponizing anti-Semitism. And I will try to explain. And my answer will have a couple of components, okay? A, there is real anti-Semitism in the world. There are people who don't like us. Unlike past periods in our history, in the world history, in which the hatred of the Jews was the most prominent one, now, thank God, we have a huge menu of hatred. Tell me what you want to hate. Colors, I give you. Sexual tendency, I'll give you. Gender, I'll give you. Origins, I give you. Faith, I give you. All of a sudden, our hating Jews is not that unique. And the question we are facing is, do we really have to monopolize the suffering? To say, no. Yes, they hate colored people. Yes, they hate homophobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, Moshe-phobia, Yankel-phobia, I don't know, whatever it is, okay? Israeli, everybody hates everybody else. Do we have to come and say, no, 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 they hate us better? Or isn't it about time for us to join forces with and creating, and this is something I try to work on. I know it sounds very naive, but I'm very, very much committed to it, to create a world coalition against hatred. And wherever there are hate speech and hate crimes and hate expressions and hate politics, we're there with whomever it is. I think this is the real message. The second is the state of Israel, and especially under the conservative recent governments, created a fantastic formula. And this is to say, whomever criticized the state of Israel, and there is a lot to criticize the state of Israel. I have to criticize Canada about some behaviors of Trudeau, and I have something to say about Washington up until January 6th, and I have a lot to say about Great Britain and James Corbyn, and I have something to say about Viktor Orban in Hungary, and I have a lot to say about the Israeli occupation. It's okay to criticize politics of governments, but Israel said, no, you cannot criticize me because whomever legitimately criticizes Israel is an anti-Semite. And if you're an anti-Semite, you're annihilated. If you're annihilated, you're not kosher. That's it. So in a way, Israel used or is using anti-Semitism as a shelter or as a kind of an escape route in order not to face the legitimate, well-deserved criticism like any other state. So this anti-Semitism I do not buy. Last but not least, I mentioned already that I'm writing a book. One of the chapters is a chapter in which I try to understand a little bit this whole topic of anti-Semitism. I understand the concern. My mother was sure that the world is equally divided, 50% Jews, 50% those who hate Jews. That was the world, 50-50. Okay, she never really counted heads, but it was more or less there. That was the neighborhood, okay? And the more I think about it, the more I think that, sorry, Mom, but you're wrong. The Jew and the anti-Semite are sharing the same syntax. In what sense? I believe that I'm exceptional. I'm chosen, I'm better, I'm moralistically speaking, superior, whatever it is. I'm exceptional. My history is exceptional. The anti-Semite also thinks that I'm exceptional. And therefore I'm awful and lousy, and this is why he hates me. But we both share the notion of Jewish exceptionalism. So when I correspond with my mom, I tell her, she's not with us anymore, okay? I tell her, Mom, the world is not divided 50% Jews and 50% those who hate Jews. It is divided between those who believe the Jews are exceptional, among them Jews and anti-Semites, and those who believe that all human beings are equal, Jews and non-Jews alike. And therefore, the minute you see the partition lines in a different place, the whole conversation is a different conversation. Just go down to Santiago, okay? Somebody once drew a line between San Diego and Tijuana, right? Imagine the line would have been drawn not this way, but that way. And all of a sudden, Tijuana is like El Paso, or San Diego is like somewhere in Mexico City. It's only about partition lines, so let's change them. And I draw different lines.
I'd like to ask a question. Hello? I'd like to ask a question if I could. I really agree with your view of making rights the primary approach to resolving the problems that we're talking about here. But the thing that I also agree with your idea of civil society organizations working to advance that vision. Rights for everybody, the same rights for everybody, regardless of who they are. But what do you do about those stone cold obstacles called settlers who maintain a colonial mentality, who walk around saying death to Arabs and so forth? how do you deal with those, with that problem?
It's easy and impossible, okay? Easy is, if it's in my hands, which is not, I say, take a harsh leadership measure. And this is what I believe, that this is what I thought about at the time in which I was very much involved in the two states project and the Palestinian state and the Oslo Accord and the Geneva and you name it. And this is to say, listen, once we have an agreement between us and the Palestinians, it is our responsibility to restrain or to tame those rebellious fundamentalists. And it is the responsibility of the Palestinians to do the same, but their opposition coming from the religious fundamentalist circles. So if each and every one of us will control, tame the rebellious elements, it's okay. And I think it's possible, up until today, I think it's possible to remove most, if not all, the settlers out of the West Bank. I do not see any Israeli leader at the near future doing that, okay? So if it is not this, here is the following thing. I do not believe that the discourse today in Israel, as much as we love to believe in it, is about one state or two states formula, as if this is the real thing. I think that as for now, and maybe it will come back one day, but as for now, the one state solution, the two state solution is somewhere between dead and sleeping. It's a deep hibernation. I do not see it happen because of us and because of the Palestinians and because of the settlers and because of Hamas and because of the international community and whatever it is. And the real debate is, what kind of a one-state solution will it be? Will it be the one state of today in which that one state with two regimes, one regime full of privileges to the Jews and one regime full of discrimination to the Palestinians? Or will it be one state in which every individual is equal? So there are problems with this formula, but if Israel eventually do not or cannot remove the settlers from the depths of the potential future Palestinian state, there is only one way out of it, and this is a one-state solution, that one person, one vote between the Jordan and the Mediterranean.
Speaker Burg, thank you so much. I'm not sure if you should have been a philosopher or a politician, but I think either one is good. Okay. Last quick question. What is your own ambition right now in the Israeli political system? How can we help whatever cause you're getting behind?
My ambition is not the next marathon. Well, I do not want to share with you my ambitions that so small. What I'm struggling now is looking for funding to translate my book. Okay, this is so small. No, I think that, and here I'll be very, very serious. I feel that the fact that you are involved in something like this one, it will give me a great power and a great energy to know that you expand the circles of support of activities like this. And I really seriously, I'm involved, believe it or not, I'm involved in so many of these things, New Israel Fund included, and Eliezer here is wrong. The New Israel Fund was actually the foundation of the entire civil society of Israel. They are the builders of the civil society and the NGOs in Israel during the 80s and 90s and kept alive the flame of hope. So any donation, and donation is for me not just money. Donation for me is time and experience and networks and contacts and organizing other evenings like this to spread the idea and to recruit more support and political and public connections, Jewish and non-Jewish alike, eventually will make this thing possible. And I'll give you two examples. You know the concept of the how do you call it, the ink stain? You have a fountain pen. We don't have it anymore, but we used to have fountain pen, right? So with a fountain pen, you put it in your pocket. Did you have a fountain pen, Peter? How many times did it leak? Tell me, how many times did it leak? Okay, so what happened? It begins with a little schmutz here, right? I mean, just a little blue dot, and then it expands and expands and expands and expands till the entire shirt is blue. And I say, what we do here, exactly this concept is the ink. It's the ink stain. Let it expand. Let it go. Spread the message. Give us power to do more and more activities like this, and organize the same over there. And I take it. I mean, I didn't ask Beth about it and the rest of the people here, but I take it that whatever challenge you put in front of us, which is let's expand this value system, I take it we can meet it by meeting people, talking, persuading, writing, arguing, and try to make friends with. Let's increase the goodness in the world.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you. I just want to, I'm going to switch to gallery view. This has been tremendous, and we are so grateful as a Combatants for Peace community. To you, Avrum Burg, to all of you as our most important supporters. Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure what else there is. Like, that's, yeah. You all are the reason that this work is possible. You are the reason that this work is expanding. And I think together with, you know, political leaders like you, Avrum Burg, and, you know, the leaders in the states like you all, this, hopefully we can make real impact. So.
Thank you very, very much. See you soon. Bye-bye, dears.
Thank you.
Bye.